Hey everyone, it's Jeff Cohen with C-Level Roundtable, author of Count Honorable, and we have a really provocative conversation today. It's really amazing to me, and as we go through it with Remy Meraz and Julian Lewis of Zella Life, as we go through it and as we're having our prep conversation for this discussion today, really got clear to me how easy it is to miss out on experiencing the feelings other people experience. And I do it all the time. I don't mean to. I'm sorry. I may do it right now. If I do, I apologize in advance. And I've asked Remy and Julian, if I do, to call me on it while we're in this conversation, just because I can totally own it, like whatever I do. So I just want to let you know I'm coming from a place where I'm being curious. And when Remy suggested the conversation we want to have during Black History Month is what companies get wrong about managing BiPOC talent and how companies engage with people of color, and the flip side, how do people of color engage with companies? It's really an amazing conversation. And so with me, I just want to welcome Remy and Julian. Hey, thank you guys so much for joining today. It's great to see you again. I love doing these conversations with you. So Remy, kick it off for us. What's the biggest thing that you see companies are missing about managing their BiPOC talent pool?
Yeah, thanks for having us, and thanks for your courage and bravery and vulnerability in having the conversation and willing to own your pieces, right? That where you may have some blind spots. So I think that's a great start for everybody. But what we have found that people or companies are missing when it comes to BiPOC talent is that we have different challenges and needs versus the white population, right? The white working force population. And Julian and I can speak to this based on our own personal experiences, and it's really the genesis of how Zella Life was born and why we are on a mission to bridge the diversity gap between talent and leadership. And, just giving you some context from our own personal experiences, we both worked in environments where we didn't see leaders that looked like us, which meant that we didn't have the mentorship that other folks were getting. And we also didn't have the psychological safety with our leaders or HR to talk about the various things that we were experiencing. And we both, in our respective careers, had experienced microaggressions and racism and discrimination. And for me, having worked in very male dominated industries, I've dealt with a lot of toxic masculinity and misogyny. And we both chose to invest in coaching and therapy on our own and invest in ourselves. And we learned that we had blind spots too, right? And that we were also getting in our own way because we had imposter syndrome, we had racial trauma, we had generational trauma, and we were bringing that into the workplace. And so, yes, the company had challenges and problems of their own, and we got empowered and learned how to communicate more effectively and self-advocate and all the things to become better managers, which eventually led to higher leadership roles. But we also learned how to get out of our own way. And that's part of the challenge, is that companies are using blanket approaches when it comes to training and development, and not understanding that we have special but different needs, and they need to be handled differently. And quite frankly, companies in corporate America are not equipped to dig in deeper and help folks like the coaches were able to do with us.
That's really great, Remy. And first off, I want to thank you for acknowledging that it does take something to be able to have this specific conversation. You've brought some really great points to light, but I think what it really brings up is the survey that you sent over as we were starting to look at this conversation, where employees were surveyed, and 42% were found to have identified racial discrimination in the workplace. And also 42% were also found ageism in the workplace. Now, both of those are really big issues and they do overlap. But the fact of the matter is that what you just shared about your experience and having to invest in yourself in order to get sorted out and deal with what you did to be able to rise in a company, that's something companies are now taking on themselves because they recognize the huge disparity between where people want to be and where they actually are today, isn't it? Julian, can you comment on that?
Yeah, it's even deeper than that. And I'll give you an example because Remy spoke about professionally what she had to deal with. But there's something that happens before we enter in a professional environment. Before we enter into a professional environment, we're already coming with experiences in life. And so I'll give you one for an example. In North County neighborhood in San Diego, you know where you live, my neighborhood in Rancho Bernardo in a cul-de-sac. I'm leaving my garage and it's a hot day and I look out into the blacktop and I see a bicyclist, someone I guess they decided to bicycle at lunchtime, and I see them face down on the blacktop. And I go to investigate and they're unconscious and it looks like they're bleeding from the side of their face. And so I don't know if they passed out. I don't know any of these things. Now, my first thought, I saw that it was a white man on the pavement. And my first thought should have been, let me call 911, let me get this person some help. But because of my experiences as a man, the amount of times that I've been pulled over while driving a luxury car and asked, how can you own something like this? Real things that have happened in my life led me to the point where the first thing I asked was, why did I have to be the one to find him? And then here's what happened. I called the cops. My brother came out. We were waiting there, and then the police officers looked at us and said, we needed to stay put in our home because they needed to come talk to us about what actually happened. And so they looked at us more as suspects rather than people that called for help. And so now imagine, if you will, someone like that experiencing those things on a regular basis, coming into the only place where we're really diverse, which is the workplace, because every ethnic group, for the most part, they go back to home in neighborhoods around people that look more like them, churches that are more like them. And the only place that we're really diverse is in the workplace. Now, how am I supposed to show up when this is my life, even if I've made it financially to be in a position to do the things that I want to do? And so companies have to bring a level of awareness, emotional intelligence, and the ability to ask important questions related to individuals versus an equation approach that allows them to treat everyone the same.
Wow, that is extraordinarily crazy. I'm just like, if I was that guy on the ground, I would be so grateful that you came upon me. And I think I get part of what's happening in our society is, we do have a big view of the way that police treat people of color. And I can completely get from your story how that might have actually had you turn and walk away or anonymously call or something.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, what a service you did taking that risk, because it was a risk. But I also get how that bleeds over into everything else that you do.
Right. And we're bringing those experiences into the workplace.
Yeah, these are life experiences that you have day in and day out, right? And yeah, and they've created trauma in people's lives over time. And then we see every night on the news, if you're crazy enough to actually want to watch it, more and more examples of it, right? So there's evidence everywhere that it's a bad idea to do certain things. And yeah, it's no wonder people come in jaded.
Well, then imagine this, add fuel to the fire. You have people who don't have to deal with this, cannot relate, and they're hearing another message, a message that this isn't really happening, that people of color are exaggerating these things. And so they're coming to work with that perspective. And then you have people that really want to understand. So you have a mixture of and then you have people that just want to do their job and they're not aware of how this comes in. So you have all of these people clashing in the workplace, and then you have HR representative of something archaic where they're focused more on the finances and they're looking at employees as costs and not people to be invested in.
Well, before you go to HR, because HR's role is very cloudy to a lot of people. There are a lot of things people think HR ought to do, should own, might own, could own, and don't, right? And the way that people in HR operate is not necessarily focused on the culture that is being implemented in the company. That may be something they own, but the culture inside of a company is not something that HR generally is responsible for deciding. That really gets decided by the executive that runs the business, right? And maybe their inner circle and their team. But the way people get treated outside of work has them operate a certain way inside of work. And I think what I really am getting from what you're saying, Julian, is it's an opportunity for companies to actually cause a shift in the way people operate outside of work by taking the one environment that truly can be colorblind and use that environment as a springboard. Remy, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's like Julian said, it's about everyone taking accountability for improving their EQ, their emotional intelligence, to increasing their compassion and grace quotient, to increasing their curiosity quotient, right? And what we were talking about prior to this call, we were doing the pre-call, was that people of color have, out of fear, because of being killed or beaten or whatever, that we've been forced to have to adapt and to a white person's world and the rules of the game within white society. But you don't see that same level on the other side of the fence in just operating from curiosity to learn and understand our side of the fence, right?
Yeah, I totally get it. I think what, the number one trait I hear is for people to take the opportunity to be curious and not come to conclusions, to be interested and not make it about them, right? And also for companies, it's an opportunity for them to start promoting that inside of their environments and their culture.
100%.
What are you seeing when you talk to executives in companies about this problem, and how are they addressing it?
So it's interesting you bring that up, because one of the beauties that come out of the coaching that we do with organizations is that we get to see common conversation themes amongst the employees, based on the individual one-on-one coaching. And then we see all that data, and we can see those conversation themes and recognize that they're probably pervasive throughout a department or organization, right? And so here's a great example. One organization we were coaching, it was a common conversation theme that the folks that are getting recognized within their company tend to be more revenue generating producers than the support roles. But one distinguishing thing they pointed out was it was also people who were the loudest would get recognized or promoted. And so we call that the squeaky wheel syndrome. And so our coaches are helping the individuals, the talent, learn how to self-advocate properly. But here's the thing: some cultures, whether it's how you're raised or culturally, if you talk about yourself, that's considered bragging. So they may not self-advocate for themselves. And so we took this information and did a training for the leadership group, and it was really interesting. Some of the leaders mentioned, like, I had no idea like what self-advocacy really was, right? And so they're recognizing and promoting based on squeaky wheel syndrome. So we're actually getting, folks on the same side of the fence. But the message is really around to the leaders about, if you increase your awareness and your emotional intelligence and really get to know each individual employee, and like be more aware and pick up on differences and the uniqueness of each individual, and you will have to adjust your leadership approach accordingly. Because if the expectation is, well, they don't reach out to me to have coffee with me and try to build a relationship, but culturally that may not be the thing to do for them, right? It goes against how they were raised.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think I'm really clear by what you're saying, that certainly the concept of self-advocacy is not prevalent in every culture, right? In fact, in some cultures, it's not looked on positively. Also, I think there are people out there that care so much about other people. And my wife is a great example of this. You could talk to her for an hour and not know a thing about her. She is amazing when it comes to letting you have the floor. You would never know how great she is. And I bet there are a lot of people out there that we find like that too in companies.
Yeah. And the other piece of this on the company side of it is that it's expected for people to know how to self-advocate for themselves, but it's not necessarily taught.
And that's actually where I wanted to jump in, because here's what we're facing. If this was a operating room table, and we were doctors, and someone came in off of the street and they had a car accident, you saw a broken leg, you saw a broken arm, things like that, and we started addressing and dressing the broken leg and the broken arms, but we did not check internally to see if there are any root life or death issues. We could dress up the wounds, and the person would still die on the operating table. And see, that's what's happening in our nation today and in corporate America, is that we're addressing things like DEI. We're addressing things like unconscious bias or racism or discrimination. And those are the legs and the arms of the wounded body. See, at the core is something that we call in Zella Life the collective trauma gap. And at the core of that is a system that does not teach processes, modes, or systems of how to process your emotions, how to have interpersonal skills. You won't see any of these classes in elementary school, middle school, high school, or college. You're expected through parenting, which we know what that looks like for a lot of people, to learn how to have a healthy interaction and healthy dynamics with individuals and in teams. And if the percentages of marriage are any indication of how we're doing just with two people, or the percentages of business partners who actually stay together throughout the lifetime of their company are any indication, we're failing miserably. So the check has to happen with how we're teaching these soft skills, and that's leading to these damaging issues like racism, discrimination, issues with gender, and all types of things that show up as we try to interact in the workplace.
Julian, that's a great point. I'm not going to belabor it, but as a foster parent myself with a 4-year-old, I can tell you that all of the training that my wife and I have gone through to be here have prepared us for some of the things you are specifically mentioning. But I can tell you as a parent, when I had my children growing up, we never did any of that. It all came from our background and our history and what we learned from our families. Nothing wrong with that. That's the way it goes. And back to, I think the point in this conversation is that the business environment, especially larger organizations and those that are involved with a lot of the racial biases and stereotypes that are being reported on and pointed out, I think those are organizations like police departments all over the place are re-looking at how do we train our people to be racially sensitive? How do we train our people to not point a finger first? How do we train our people to create an environment where people of color are willing to step in and help a bicyclist that's falling, like right away without a second thought, right? And so, Remy, maybe you can chime in a little bit. What's the strategy you guys have at Zella Life to bring that to the public? Like, what kind of organizations are you working with today, and what kind of feedback are you getting?
Yeah, what we're seeing is, companies are doing a great job on the recruiting aspect of diverse talent, BiPOC talent, but they're not doing such a great job on the retention aspect of it, or the belonging piece of it, right? And we're hearing this from the talent and leaders too, like, hey, we do a great job of this, but not this part, right? And so, Julie and I were having this conversation the other day about, it's mind-boggling. It's just crazy to us that therapy or coaching, especially as when it pertains to the mindset, is looked at as something you do when something happens. Someone's evaluation didn't come out so great in the workplace, so we're going to send this person to get coached because essentially I don't want to say they're in trouble, but they need some improvement piece instead of a prevention. They're broken.
No, they need to be fixed. I mean, let's be straight about it. Like,
right.
People don't realize we're doing something to enhance the performance of our team. It starts with, oh, there's a problem here. There's something wrong. Sure. We have to fix it, right?
Yeah, right. And then when it comes to the therapy piece of it, and especially as it relates to law enforcement and our military, and I know this firsthand because my ex-husband was special forces in the military, that it's a concern if you've been going to therapy, like, what's wrong with you? Why have you been going? And so therefore we have so many of those individuals who know they need help and need support, but they won't go seek it because if it shows up in my personnel file, I may not get promoted. I may not get deployed. And so then we wait until an incident happens, like a suicide, or they shoot somebody, then now you have to go to therapy. Versus, as Julian said it best the other day, why can't it be that, oh my gosh, you've been going to therapy? Oh, you've been going to coaching? That's amazing. We actually will give you more points for that, or you have more credibility for this position because your mindset is right. We think nothing of when it comes to our physical body. If you want to get in good physical shape, top peak performance physical shape, you get a trainer, you get a coach. Like, why is it in reverse when it comes to our mindset? And given everything that's happening in the world and workplace shootings and school shootings and all these things, like, why is that happening? Like, why?
Well, wait, there's a couple of really good answers for that, right? We just probably don't have time for them here, but I'm going to tell you that it's clear to me there is a mindset shift in the country happening. But this is a really, really big shift, and it's taking a while. And there are a lot of people very frustrated about the length of time it's taking. They're very frustrated about the continual violence that's occurring. And it's all evidence that there's a problem and there's something wrong and there's something to be fixed. But you brought up a fabulous point, Remy, because you don't have to wait until there's a problem to work on building yourself up. As someone that's done a lot of work to look at me and myself and where I can improve, I can just tell you, I'm a whole different person today than I was 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And I like me a lot better. And I think that a lot of people miss the opportunity to like and love themselves because they don't necessarily think that that's okay. Hey, Julian, I want to leave you with the last word today. What do you want to tell people about the BiPOC coaching environment and what difference it makes for not just companies, but for our society?
What I want to say is that in my mind and in my heart, I cannot wait until we start to do exactly what Remy said. We start to incorporate it on a day to day. Remy will tell you, like I work out every single day. I work out hard. There are days where I have bonus workouts where my business partner is teasing me because I hopped on right after and I'm exhausted. But the reason why I do that isn't just for my body, it's for my mind, because what I'm doing is I'm conditioning my mind to the stresses that I voluntarily place it in. And so when we can get our most influential minds to wrap their minds around the idea of utilizing coaching and utilizing therapy as something you do consistently so that you can show up the best, then I believe that we're going to be able to erase the label of BiPOC on coaching and just have it be coaching for understanding of interpersonal skills, empathy, myself, and the way I process my emotions. And that's what I can't wait to see happen. And I know that it will happen with companies like Zella and other companies that are starting to be aware of the deeply rooted issues. Is that we've spent way too long focusing on hard skills as a system and zero time focusing on our interpersonal skills and soft skills. And as we talk about AI and all these new things that are coming to support us, what I believe that's going to happen is those interpersonal skills, those things that make us human, are going to become more valuable as we move forward in the world. And it's going to take a lot of more influential people waking up to see it.
Wow, that is really awesome. Julian, yes, I do applaud you. I first off, I'm so grateful to be connected to you guys and to do this every month with you. And I'm also really clear that, as we celebrate Black History Month and we actually learn about the history, that every religion and every culture and every color has one. And it's a reminder just to be open to it. Like, it's okay just to be curious and open and wonder. Everyone goes through whatever they go through. There's nothing wrong. And there's definitely something that we can learn every day to move us forward. So I want to thank you guys for being here today. I can't wait to figure out what our next topic is going to be. I think this has been highly valuable. If you have a company and you're looking to really bring your people together, and especially your BiPOC population, but not just that, like anyone that's not in that BiPOC population, people like me, will totally benefit from being aware and being engaged. And like they deserve extra points for having a coach that helps them see that. So I invite you to look at Zella Life. Hey guys, thanks so much for everyone on my Count Honorable team and C-Level Roundtable. Thank you for being here. I look forward to seeing you next time.